Okay. John, can you just, am I going to refer to that rule or just?
Did he give it to you?
No, I read it. So he has the right to appeal, and it's the majority vote, whether it can be overruled by the chair. So I'm going to call for the vote.
Madam Chair?
The chair, yes. go ahead.
Before we vote, what are we actually voting on?
Okay, the appeal is on, my decision was the 5 minutes that we each have will include anybody that we're calling forward to ask a question of, and then we can go as many rounds or whatever.
Point of order, just
Yes,
quick.
go ahead.
Are we allowed to discuss this? Is this a non-debatable challenge?
Non-debatable, so we're just going to vote on it. So it's voting whether or not okay, so the vote is,
Do we support the chair's decision? or
okay,
not?
yeah, do we support the chair's decision or
Madam
not?
Chair?
Yes.
I need a second for it to go through.
Well, second.
Okay.
Thank you.
So it's been seconded by Councilmember Yoshimoto.
No, I did.
I mean, Onishi, sorry. And that what we're voting on is if they're going to overrule, if it's an overrule of my decision on the 5 minutes.
Point of order of clarification,
Yes.
because you mentioned earlier about more than 3 times of discussion, where you said earlier you're going to go 3 and then you'll see.
Well, I did check with our legislative branch and our clerk, and basically it doesn't give a limit
Right.
on the rounds.
Okay.
Okay?
'Cause then-
It's
okay, so-
open.
okay, so we
If
gotta
a
make that
councilman-
clear.
Unless somebody goes, I call for the question
Right.
at this point.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
One potential suggestion, because I do think it's important to get the information.
We're supposed to discuss this.
Give 5 minutes each, so 10 minutes. If someone's calling up, the expert would get 5 minutes, the council person would get 5 minutes.
No, we're voting, right now the appeal is on my decision. So we're voting on overruling me.
Yes.
Yes, you overruling me, or no, you were going to stick to my decision of the 5 minutes. So, Mr. Clerk, please call for the vote.
This is, the vote is to overrule the chair's
Right.
5-minute decision.
Tell me again what
Okay. A yes will be yes, you're overruling my decision. No is you're agreeing with my decision. Okay? Thank you.
Ms. Eoff,
Yes.
Ms. Ford,
No.
Mr. Iligan,
Aye.
Mr. Kanuha,
Aye.
Mr. Kern,
No.
Mr. Onishi, Ms. Willie,
No.
Mr. Yoshimoto,
Aye.
Chair Poindexter.
No.
Chair Poindexter, you have 5 ayes.
Okay. So,
Madam Chair,
yes.
I just want to clarify. I just wanted to actually just ask you one question. And Councilmember Kern brought it up. That's why it triggered. But before I bring you up here, Mr. Gonzalez, I just wanted to say that we really do need all the information. We can't be one-sided on this. I'm still open-minded. I haven't made a decision yet. And some of the questions that's been addressed, I would like every question to be addressed. So one of the questions I wanted to ask Mr. Gonzalez, if you don't mind, and I apologize what happened earlier. And please state your name and title for the record.
I'm Dennis Gonzalez, and I'm a retired researcher. I retired at the end of 2012.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you one question that I really want to know, but before I do that, I'm just going to ask you a couple of these questions, just your credibility. How long have you been studying papayas? And what makes you an expert in that field?
Well, I first studied papaya for my master's degree, so that was in 1966. And I was asked to work on the problem of this papaya ring spot in 1978, and so I've been studying this problem since 1978.
Thank you. Now my question. I've been hearing a lot about cross-pollination, and I'm hearing that papaya will cross-contaminate, what I heard was tomatoes, cucumbers, things like that. So how does cross-pollination, does it stay within the papaya species, or does it cross between other species?
No, for papaya, cross-pollination occurs only within the Carica papaya, and there's only one genus species, the Carica papaya. So it just cross-pollinates among papaya.
So to my understanding, any cross-pollination will only happen within papayas, not to any other plant whatsoever.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Eoff?
Thank you. At this point, I would just like to state for the record that I have done a lot of personal homework, and I've listened to the testimony from scientists on both sides and the emotional testimony as well. And I have made up my mind, and I do want to prohibit something. I don't think I can articulate at this point exactly what it is. And I'm really grateful for the two bills. It's giving us some sense of what we could do. Personally, I'm watching Kauai very closely because I feel like that is what I'm afraid of. I don't know that we'll ever know the science on whether GMO is good or bad for us personally, whether we should eat it or not. And I don't want us, well, personally, I don't want to make that kind of conclusions. But I do want to protect our land and our water and our people from pesticide drift and the type of chemical spraying that's being done on the corn on Kauai, Molokai, Maui, and the North Shore of Oahu right now. I think they've had it there, this type of farming, which is a corporate farming practice that Monsanto is utilizing, and Syngenta, Dow, and the bigger chemical companies. This farming practice is what I'm afraid of. So personally, that's all I have decided right now. I think the science is out on anything else, and it's very difficult for us, no matter how much we meet on it, to actually go too much further than that, although I want to. You know, my gut feeling is, yeah, let's make Hawaii Island a GMO-free zone. I feel that. But I don't know if we can accomplish that right now, but I would like us to do something that will protect the air, land, and water, because I think we can. I think science can even tell us that that is dangerous. I think that's something we can conclude. I think an ad hoc committee, although we're not talking about it right now, is something we should utilize. But I don't think that should prevent us from discussing the two bills and discussing the prohibition and bringing up experts here today and in the future to help us to articulate what it is we do need to prohibit here on the Big Island. So thank you. I'm going to leave it at that because I need to listen a little bit more to how this conversation goes. But I just wanted to state for the record that that's where my thinking is right now, because, and I would really like to watch Kauai. I mean, they're looking at years of heavy restricted use pesticides, and they're looking at kids who have gotten sick, and they're looking at lawsuits, and they're looking at the damage to the land and to the water. And I believe to promote agriculture here is essential to our economy. And I think that there's a direction we can go. And I think by limiting the big corporations and that type of farming, we'll be doing a great service to the future here. And, but like I said, I'm not really prepared how to state that just yet, so that's the kind of information that I'm personally looking for. So thank you.
I'm going to go to Councilmember Onishi and then to
Okay, thank you, Madam
Councilmember
Chair.
Kern.
Council members, I just, want to make sure that you folks understand is that, if we vote for any of these bills right now, okay, are we willing, or are we telling the people that we're going to be taking away their freedom of choice? Okay, so that's one of the main things that I'm worried about, is that we live in the United States. We need to have everyone to have a freedom of choice. And so if we're going to take that away from them, then what are we telling them? What kind of a government are we going to start running? Are we going to start telling them that they cannot, well, we already did, like we told them they cannot smoke in cars when they have kids in the car. Okay, so are we going to start restricting everyone from doing certain things? So that's why, to me, when I made that tabling, was like we're moving the cart before the horse. Okay, because we need to get as much information. And Councilmember, you folks admitting that you folks need more information. So,
Point of order.
but what?
Point of order, Mr. Onishi. We've already voted on the tabling, so we need to not go there.
No, I was just making a comment, and I'm just saying that, that you folks are making this decision. And so what I'm just saying is that what I'm hearing is that people, like when Mr. Yoshimoto asked Ms. Willie a question, she didn't know for sure her answer 100%. So that's the kind of stuff that's happening right now. We don't have 100% guarantee that we know what are the facts and what is the truth. And so that's, to me, that's why I'm kind of like, I guess, frustrated right here. Okay, because we're not having the proper discussions and the proper information that we're getting. And, council members, remember when we had the last meeting, council members or Miss Willie had mentioned that, okay, she's going to withdraw. She was going to get everybody, all the stakeholders together and have a discussion. That never happened. Ms. Poindexter mentioned about she was going to get all these people together, like that person from that bee, the well-known guy that raised the bees, and she was going to get everybody together. I don't think that happened too, because we never got any information about that.
Just point of order. Don't make assumptions in your statements on people and misleading the public.
Well-
So I just asking, don't make
Well,
misleading statements to
Because,
the
wait,
public.
okay, but the thing was, you were supposed to get back to us and let us know what was the discussion.
A point of order. Could we please discuss the bills?
Okay.
That's what we're here to do, not all this extraneous stuff.
For clarification purposes, you cannot get back to other people because of the Sunshine Law, so it happens here. So just move forward on the discussion on 109 and 113. Thank you.
Okay. Well, to me, it's like we still need more information, and so right now, like I'm telling, is that I'm undecided, and I'm gonna need more further information to make my decision. Thank you.
Councilmember Kern.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Ms. Eoff actually articulated it somewhat well. I have the same exact issue. It's what's happened on Kauai is wrong. We cannot have that happen here. And that's why I want to make a distinction between the Monsanto, the big giant, the predatory farming, that side of it. To me, that's clear. I, too, have made that decision, guaranteed. What I don't want to do is lump the smaller farmer and our potential avenues, or without understanding it, into that same category. And that's why I think during this committee meeting, we can actually hopefully find more of this out and maybe get into the ad hoc. So that's clear on my side, too. Is there how many scientists are here in the audience? Please raise your hand. With degrees. Okay, can I get You in the front row, since Mr. Gonzalez already came up, you in the front row, would you please come forward to the table? And please come up.
You only get 5 minutes.
No?
No, I get as long as I want.
With some goodwill. With some goodwill.
So one of my concerns is the horticultural industry. Is it possible for a bee to fly into an orchid or something like that, a flower, and then go? I get to ask the questions. There's no point of you being rude here. I thought this is what this is about. Yeah, this is the process. Is it possible for that to happen, where a bee can pollinate from a flower, or is it possible in general for a flower that's GMO, let's say, to cross-pollinate into another food crop, tomato, papaya, whatever it be?
Hey, I'm Dr. Susan Miyasaka. I have a PhD in agronomy. I've worked over the past 20 years at the University of Hawaii as an agronomist. So my area of specialization is not in flowers, but I can tell you that you cannot cross-pollinate between species. So that would not be possible for a bee to cross-pollinate a flower unless it was the same species as a food crop species.
My name's Andrea Rozanoff. I am a PhD in nutrition, and my main subject is nutritional magnesium. And I'm Director of Research at the Center for Magnesium Education and Research. I am not a agronomist, except where it comes to nutrition, and I am not an entomologist, and so I do not know about the bees and cross-pollination. You would need to go to an expert in that field to answer that question.
Thank you. So that leads me to we should invite somebody in at that level to answer these questions. Thank you, ladies. You can have a seat.
That would be a very good idea.
And that's what I think we should do is get to the point of what questions do we have? Because I want to know, will they cross-pollinate? Because if they will, if the flowers will somehow transfer over, that's a different issue. If it's not, we should be just put that industry on the side for right now. Yeah, go ahead.
I would like to make one addendum. I've been studying science since, 1962. A long time. Science is hard. Science is controversial. And you can get many, unless you invite every single expert in the field in and listen to all of them and understand what they're saying, which is a challenge. You'll still not know everything. And science is really great, and I spend my life doing it. But your job is to take larger than that.
I'm going to have to stop you because that's actually getting into testimony, and we already did that, and I'm sure I appreciate that. I'm just trying to keep it balanced.
I just wanted to comment. You asked specifically about orchids, right? And there is one orchid plant that I know of that does produce at least a spice, and that would be vanilla. So it is possible that a bee could cross-pollinate, say, between an orchid, if it was genetically modified, into vanilla, if they're the same, orchid species. I'm not sure. Again, I really think it's better if you call an expert in this area.
Okay, thank you for that. So I feel that we do need more. I appreciate the people here to help us, but we do need more experts for stuff like this because we're lumping and just separating out the horticultural industry from the food production. To me, they're different. But if they're going to somehow merge and have an issue, I want to know about that, and that would make this decision completely different. You know what I mean? And so I'm concerned that we're just going to be kind of going around. I feel this, I feel that. I want questions answered, and I think the platform to do that is either here at a committee or in a ad hoc committee, but I'm okay doing it here. Let the public's here watching. I don't think we can possibly handle that today because we need to invite these folks in there. But how are we going to do that to make these finer decisions that are going to have an effect of our island? With the main point of what I would like to do is make sure that what happened on Kauai does not happen here, that we are able to keep the predatory farming, the pesticide crazy type farming out. I'd like to hear what anybody else has to say. Let's figure out who do we need here at the table, because we're not experts. Thank you.
Madam Chair, just
yes.
point of order. Can you make sure that council members don't make any expressions or faces at other council members when they're talking? Okay, can you please control that, please? Thank you.
So I will say that just out of respect for each other, I will ask that we be courteous of each other and just respect each other's opinion, and I think that's fair. So thank you. Councilmember Ford?
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to try to answer some of your questions. First of all, I'm a former beekeeper. I have some expertise in honeybees, European honeybees, not Hawaiian native honeybees. I was a former biology major, so I have some expertise in this area. I don't always agree with scientists, but I will tell you that the scientists who came up here and told you you cannot have cross-species pollination or hybridization are telling the truth. You cannot have a honeybee cross with an elephant. It doesn't work. There are different chromosome counts. The arrangement of the chromosomes are different inside these different species. You cannot lump all flowers together under one umbrella. They all have different chromosome counts, different things. First of all, in orchids, honeybees do not pollinate orchids. You know how you pollinate orchids? You get like this. You go by hand to cross-pollinate orchids. That's how it's done, because the normal pollinators in South America, Central America, wherever orchids grow, don't exist here. And the honeybee cannot get into the lip of the orchid. There may be some exceptions someplace on the planet. I don't know about all 60,000 species of orchids, but generically the orchids we grow here are not pollinated by honeybees. However, there's a lot of things that are. 30% of the crops we eat are pollinated by honeybees, things like apples, oranges, prunes, whatever. Those all have honeybee pollination. But you can't take an orange and have it cross-pollinated by a honeybee with a cabbage. It doesn't work. Those species are so different. Their chromosome counts are different, and everything else inside the chromosomes are different. They don't work. Yet it doesn't work. So the problem with the honeybees is when they get on a plant that is either herbicide or pesticide resistant with a GMO gene, and they pick that up in the pollen or the nectar and take it home to the hive for the babies to eat, it could kill off the babies depending on what it is. So I just want you to understand what honeybees will and won't do, and I want you to understand that these scientists are telling you the truth when they say these things won't cross. But you cannot lump all flowers together. We have a lot of flowers that we grow here that are pollinated by honeybees. I'm not going to go through the whole list. I'm more familiar with the ones from the mainland, things like carnations and chrysanthemums and those type of things. The honeybees go and pick up pollen and nectar from them and take them home to their hive and to feed the babies and themselves. And so they would be susceptible to anything that's in the pollen or the nectar from that plant. The science, as I mentioned before, on GMO is not what I would call state-of-the-art. We are in its infancy. There's a shotgun. They're not strategically going in and saying, I'm going to cut out this one little bitty gene on this chromosome, and I'm going to replace it with a different gene. They shotgun this stuff in. It can land any place in the chromosome count. And that's the problem. When you start rearranging the chromosome with these random hits, you could be turning on and turning off other genes that have nothing to do with what you're attempting to put into the chromosome count. That's why people are so upset about them. And then you use cross species. You can put a spider silk gene into something else and try to get that plant to produce, or animal to produce, or animal because in the milk or whatever, you can have them produce those things that normally they wouldn't produce. People are objecting to it. There are people who say, we don't want any human genes inputted into any kind of a plant. We have vegans that don't want anything from an animal put into the plant product, because once you put a gene in there and it's operational, then it can cross-pollinate. A carrot can now cross-pollinate another carrot just by air. It doesn't even take a honeybee. It can be through the air. Corn goes hundreds of miles in the air. The pollen can be branched out, blown out into the atmosphere and blown hundreds of miles. The reason you have organic farmers upset is they believe in a freedom of choice. They want to grow GMO-free stuff. They don't want to eat it. They don't want to grow it. But if you've got somebody on this island, or worse, next door, growing GMO corn as an example, and they're trying to grow organic corn, they get contaminated. They can't grow. People are saying that we're being bullies to the people who want to grow GMO. The bullies are the ones who say, I'll be darned, I'm going to grow GMO, and if I contaminate your crop, too bad. The freedom of choice has been lost by the organic gardener, and that's what all these people are complaining about. 90% of our island is complaining about they don't want to be forced to do GMO. I think that was my time.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Willie was first waiting. Ms. Willie?
Okay. I want to just reiterate what Councilmember Onishi said in terms of aloha. I think we're all here, aloha, we all trying to do what's best for the island, and it's a difficult area. It's globally everywhere. So I just want to reinforce that we're all here together trying to chart our future. I want to respond to somewhat of what Councilmember Ilgan said, and just in terms of papaya. I do think the reason that I accepted that, when we sort of focus on what the issues are with papaya, that at least in my bill, if you're supporting that, they have gone through a lot of additional testing, as they said, in order to get into the Japanese market, far more than what are federal or state. So I just want, when you were asking about that, and I think that it's one of the crops which you can, if you do it right, do it where you're 15 feet away from one another. There can be coexistence. If you don't pay attention to those rules, you can cross from the female GMO over to the female non-GMO. So I do think we're right now, again, I want to say, I think one thing when Councilmember Yoshimoto brought up, and that we need to answer questions. For me, it comes down to, we hold in place and have the discussion, or do we leave the door open and have the discussion and work forward? I know that from when Nancy Redfeather and others were in there was the state had sort of an ad hoc committee, and where it was, let's not do anything till we study it, nothing happened. So I'm just trying to hold us. All of these questions are valid. I think the other thing that Jay has also brought up is maybe we ought to continue this before the council and work on it, so we have it as a council discussion. I think the only thing there is other people saying, hey, we have other things to do. We would need to say we're going to do it on a separate day and not be where we're holding things up. So I was trying to take the middle course of let's just hold in place, and if you all don't think I've designed mine, that was the intent. That's what I was trying to do. I also, just in terms of Councilmember Eoff, and sort of watching Kauai, and where so many people are bringing lawsuits and having issues, one of the things that's been found is, say, where there are, and this is, I think we need to focus on like seeds, where there are bee and wind pollinated issues. It's far more than others. And let me just say, I'm going to call Ben Cohen up, so if he could come to the table in Kona. I'm just going to finish my sentence here. Like the effects on people and the soil in Idaho is much less, where you have shorter growing seasons. In Mississippi, where they have 9 months, far more devastating in terms of the water and earth. We are at a year round. So I just want to point out the differences there. And Ben, are you there in Kona? And I just want to, again, I'm come back to the soil. I'm focused on that area and contamination. And Ben is a nutritionist and has been studying soil. And I just want to sort of someone here in the community that has sort of the focus of where I'm, Malama Aina soil, that we need to be building up soil and not worrying that we're sterilizing and using such intense, as the Roundup, and killing the microbes and creating all these toxic dust storms. Ben, can you just comment in terms of soil?
Yes, absolutely.
And who you are, and just say a little bit of what you've studied.
Okay, am I coming through?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Benjamin Cohn, and I'm a certified nutritionist. And I'm in close contact with what's happening on Kauai. And there, you don't really have to be a soil scientist to see that there's dust coming off of those agricultural plots and damaging people's homes physically, to the point that they have sued the companies there. And what's mainly found in this type of agriculture is that when you spray lots of pesticides and herbicides and you kill off the microorganisms in the soil, which hold the soil together, the topsoil flies off. And we're seeing that erosion in the past 40 years has made 30% of the world's arable land unproductive. And then on our islands, we have a limited amount of topsoil, obviously. So, I think we need to be engaged in soil building practices rather than soil destructive practices. That would make sense for us, for our ecosystem, for the type of farming that makes sense for us here, that we have done traditionally for thousands of years. Native Hawaiians were able to build soil using mulching and composting techniques. There are people doing that here on the island in the marketplace. We have like Kona coffee farmers who are now mulching and composting their farms, who are selling top dollar to Europe. So these are kind of like the techniques that we're looking into the future, because on our planet in general, we can't afford to lose any more topsoil. And once we lose that, and we lose the mineralization in the soil, we lose a lot of nutrients, and then we have to keep putting nutrients in. And as we lose more and more nutrients, we lose that in our food that we're eating. So the point of growing food is to, give ourselves nutrition, first of all. And if we don't have the nutrients in the food, and we're only putting 3 main nutrients in, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and then maybe there might be a little calcium, magnesium adjustments to the soil in your standard, conventional or GMO or biotech farming, you're not going to have all the trace minerals that you would get from composting, mulching, and adding things like sea vegetables and whatnot, and then the microorganism is also contributing to that mineralization. It's holding the minerals in the soil. So soil building techniques, I think, is the focus of it, and that's kind of what I think your bill is going for, is to stop the erosion of the soil and to protect our soil and then protect our people, because on Kauai you have where people, the topsoil that's leaving the dust is mixed in with pesticide and herbicide, so it's damaging their homes, which is what started and prompted the lawsuit. And now they're finding that because of the lawsuit, they had the USDA come in and do testing in the Waimea schools, and found that there was all kinds of herbicides and pesticides in the school itself. And you can talk to Attorney Gerard Jervis on Oahu, who's representing these families, and get a very clear idea of what's happening there.
Okay, thank you, Ben.
You're welcome.
One last comment I have, and that's with respect to just sort of science. I mean, there is science on both sides, and I think that we need to, where I go is to the precautionary principles where there's science on both sides. Let's err on caution. Let's err on halting where we are and asking the questions, coexistence, and how we do that moving forward. And like Brenda said, with respect to the bees, there was one large bee foundation in the world that was doing the research on bees to affecting GMOs, and Monsanto bought out that foundation, and there was no more research done in that area.
Thank you. Okay, so anybody else on round 2 that have not spoken? Councilmember Kanuha?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Personally, for me, I hear the testimony involved, and everybody's saying the big multinational corporations, Monsanto, Syngenta, all this type of things. I understand the need to say that we don't want them coming here on these islands. I'm worried that what we're doing here is going to affect every small farmer that is growing food for these islands, for this island. That's what I'm worried about. What are we going to do? What's happening to our farmers, the ability to farm? I can understand, disease, viruses. How did we adapt? We use certain things to get rid of these pests, diseases, and viruses so that we could grow the foods that we needed to grow for these islands. We didn't use the certain farming techniques of the past. We kind of forgot about what we were doing in the past, but we had to adapt. How did we adapt? We used these certain chemicals and pesticides to kill off these invasive species. So now we're here today. We're using the technologies of the future, and personally for me, I don't think it's a bad thing that we're going into this technological advances. I think we need to, as a community, as a nation, as a world, to try to advance our technological thought, our advanced means of technology and advances. But for me, I see what we're doing, on this island. Maybe I'll just start talking about the bill. I basically want to focus on Margaret's bill. I think she listened to exactly what we all said in the last round of testimony, in the last round of discussions. And how do we work together? How do we be cooperative with each other in both sectors of GMO, pro-GMO, against GMO? And I think how you did it, Margaret, was a better way of doing it. I thank you for that, for putting those amendments into it. But I think we need to, for myself, we need to completely exempt what we have here. Completely exempt what we have here. I don't know how you're going to fit it into the bill or amend it, but that's where I feel. And then, of course, you did that ad hoc committee. I don't want to talk about that, but I think that's a really good point, because I don't know all the information. I really don't. And I want to be able to talk about it more in the future and know exactly what I'm going to be, what's going to happen. But until then, I think we need to understand what's going on here, what's going on these islands, what's going on, how it's going to affect our farmers, how it's going to affect our sustainability, our food security here on this island. I think that's the most important point we need to bring up. How is this all going to affect all of us in how we can grow what we need to grow, how we all need to feed our families? I mean, we see hundreds of people coming to testify. That's important. That's really important, and I'm glad that everybody came to testify. But I mean, we represent 180,000 people on this island. That's a lot of other people, that aren't really voicing their concerns about what. I'm sure the majority of them don't really know exactly what they're eating, what's been growing on this island. So I do believe that we all need to have a choice of what we need to eat, and of course know about what we're eating, and everybody needs to understand what they're eating. But it's difficult now when the mother of three can't afford to buy, certain types of foods. We're subjected to over 80% of imported foods on the store shelves, and that's a huge concern of mine. What are we going to do to feed our families, to feed everybody on this island? So I think we need to, for myself, I'm going to focus, no offense to Ms. Ford, because I applaud what you're doing as well, but I think we need to focus on, for myself, I want to focus on Margaret's bill in how to keep what we have here, keep what we have now. I don't want to affect any, I know it's going to affect, which is sad, but I don't want to affect more of what we currently have to our small farmers. I don't want them, obviously, to go out of business. I'm not here to put people out of business, and I think that would be completely wrong of us to do that, so thank you.
Mr. Elegant, you didn't speak in the second round yet, so I'm going to call on you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things that I'm hearing is, and I feel the same way, we do want to protect our environment. And I want to know, I want to compare the two. Because before, the district that I represent was filled with papaya farms, and they were, I believe, conventional farming. I want to know here within the audience, who are papaya farmers, who's been farming for, let's say, over 20 years. I'm gonna call both of you up, Peter and Orlando. Because what I'm hearing is that because now you are farming GM papayas, that you are adding more pesticides, more herbicides, because it's genetically modified papaya. What I want to know is, ever since you switched to GM papayas, did you have to use more herbicides, more pesticides because of that reason?
No. No.
Thank you.
No.
And could you please state your name and title?
I'm Orlando Manuel.
Microphone.
I'm Orlando Manuel, and I'm farming papaya since 1973.
Thank you.
Peter Hool, I worked at AmFac back in 1989 as I ran, I guess it was the engineering department back then to install vapor heat chambers, and that was sold out a couple times, but been working with a couple, 300-400 farmers since then, and work with about 30 to 40 of them right now, and they don't use anymore.
Okay, so thank you. So that's my first question, and my last question is, what would the reason be if you were to use more pesticides? Why would you even do that? What, more herbicides, more pesticides? Why would you even put more if you have to? What would be the purpose?
None.
None? Why none?
No other reason to put more pesticide if you don't have to. In fact, since I've been planting GMO, I don't have to worry about the insect vector that transmit the virus. So practically, I use less of this pesticide.
Okay.
And so with the herbicide, the only reason why you probably use more herbicide more often is Mother Nature. If you get more rain and comes the sun, growth is more vigorous. And that's the only reason why you probably put more herbicide. And normally, the only time that you use herbicide or pesticide is when your threshold is reached. When it's not, it's no more, it's no longer economical to stay the same. So that's the only time, for me, that's the only time I use pesticide or herbicide.
Thank you, Orlando. Peter?
Prior to the GMO, farmers were trying to, when the virus was abundant and it was everywhere, farmers were trying to use pesticides to, and I'll just speak on pesticides, to chase the, I believe it was the white, the aphid vector that was spreading the virus. They would use more to chase it, and all it did was infect the fields quicker. So that was the thinking back then. That was the reason they used more back then. And then when Dr. Gonzalez brought, I think it was about 1998, 99, we started planting that, we didn't have to use those pesticides to chase that aphid. So it didn't transmit.
Thank you.
So we used less.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming up. Those were my questions. So we're here to protect this environment. And if we can use an innovation that will be using less pesticides or herbicides, that's kind of the direction I would like to go. Now, we all understand that we can't just put we have to look at it as a case by case. We can't just put it in one law that fits all. And the thing is, I would rather, when Council Member Willie mentioned that there's science on both sides, and we are looking into this issue, especially the reason why we have these bills, as I'm reading the purposes, is that we're here to protect the general public. We're here elected to protect you. And as Councilmember Willie said, there's science on both sides. I would like to hear the science on the side, both sides, where it becomes an imminent danger to the public. I do want to hear that science. I would like someone to please bring that science up. Thank you. Oh, I'll take just one more minute, and I would like to call upon this gentleman, Derek Brewer. Could you please? Derek, please state your name and
my name
title.
is Derek Brewer. I'm a co-founder of Eco Hostel Hawaii, organic farm on the island. We've been here for about 2 years now and are concerned for our long-term farming practices on this island.
Okay, now before I say my question, I wanted to ask you, my question is the health reasons. And before I ask that question, could you please tell me why you're an expert in this field?
I was in the military up until 2011. I had about 5 years where I was planning what I was going to do when I got out of the military. Spent about a year in Afghanistan and 6 months in Iraq, just thinking about what I was going to do. I've been planning what I was going to do, researching as much as possibly could. I've accumulated a vast amount of knowledge. I have friends within the university. I'm teaching a farm class on business plan development currently myself through the community system. And I am done a lot of private research myself and have gone into the science of the epigenetics and a deeper understanding of that part of the issue than a lot of people, I feel.
So most of your work is self-researched.
Correct.
And I admire that because most of my work is also self-researched. And it seems like you didn't go through the traditional path as the university. Correct. And with your findings, this is your interpretation and your opinion.
Correct.
Okay. What is your expert opinion of the reason why it's dangerous for the public to be consuming GM crops or foods?
Correct. Okay. Well, the science, as we said, is in its infancy, and there is a difference between the crops. Is a very big importance there. Is that a lot of this discussion is resolved around the papaya specifically, but the papaya's methods that were used to produce it are very different than some of the methods being used to produce the new crops and other crops that are available to be on this island. They cross-pollinate very differently, and every crop has a potential for contamination. It is not guaranteed, but there's always a potential. And if there is a potential, then it will lead to eventually happen over a long enough period of time. It will happen. So what we're talking about here is that the foods have, some studies show that there's a lack of nutrition in there due to the engineering of it, because there has been changes to the genetic structure. Our major concern is what it does to other crops, and the fact that it does take away our right to choose. And the health issue there is because crops like BT111 and the corn or any other future crops that would use that sort of science behind it means that we are consuming it as well as the systems in our environment. And as the bees were stated previously, there are other pollinators that are affected by this, which affects our lives too, because it will not, the reduction of bees leads to a reduction in the open pollination, leads to cross-contamination as previously stated. But to get back to the food issue, we don't understand the science completely. When you get to science, there is mutations that occur in the natural environment. After it is released, there are changes that occur. You hear about the bird flu, how it changes every time. They're like, well, this is a new strain, there's a new change to it, and that will happen in nature. So what you're dealing with is the release of a new species that will evolve and adapt without any history of it ever being here. And that is the health concern, is what can potentially happen. There is all sorts of realms of unknowns here, and that is the scary part, is we have not tackled all these unknowns, yet we have released it into the wild.
Thank you, Derek.
Thank you.
What I got from you is that the potential unknown.
Correct.
And
there's a lot of them.
I just remember, thank you, Derek, for coming up here and sharing your wisdom. I do want to ask Andrea, because Andrea does have a background in nutrition, and I would like to ask her if you could step up, Andrea, one last time for me.
Derek, turn your button.
Yeah, and Derek, you can sit down if. Andrea, please share your background. How long have you been? You did with Councilmember Kern. I wanted to ask you: have you gotten a chance to see the nutritional analysis for the GM papayas?
Yes. Yes, I have. I've searched for nutrition analysis for some of the GM foods in general, including the papaya, because they've been stated for a long time that they are equivalent, that the GM crops are equivalent to the non-GM crops. And the basis of most of these are what are called proximate analysis, where they analyze for carbohydrate, calories, protein, fat, and water content. And what they do for the mineral content is called ash. It's a very old-fashioned nutrition thing, and it is a total ash content. What they haven't specifically looked at are the vitamins and the minerals individually, and of course there's very many essential vitamins and minerals for the human being, and the wonderful thing about foods, especially fruits and vegetable crops, is that evolutionarily we've evolved together, and that there is a good balance of adequacy and balance of vitamins and minerals in natural foods that go along with the human physiology, for the most part. But in most of the GM work on the grains, for example, and the canola and the soy and those things, and the alfalfa, have not done the vitamins and the minerals specifically, but the work for the rainbow papaya has included the vitamins and the minerals in a way that the others have not. It's not absolutely complete.
What was your finding? Because I have limited time.
That they, except for one element, calcium, which is just a tiny bit different in the GM papaya than in the non-GM papaya, they're equivalent. They are not statistically different. And that's a very difficult study to do, and it was done very, very well. But I also have to say, the only one that was statistically different was calcium, and the difference in that, I would say, is a non-nutritional concern for a human being. The concern comes there on the basic unknown biological world, which is, okay, if the calcium's different but the magnesium's the same, then that means the calcium to magnesium ratio is a little bit different. And what does that mean? Why would changing one gene change that important physiology in a cell? And that's a very large question that we're not going to know the answer to for a very long time.
Thank you, Andrea. So what you mentioned and what I conclude is that I can eat an organic papaya and a GM papaya, and it'd be nutritionally the same when I eat it.
As far as the genetics of it from the studies that have been done, that's true. Of course, every plant, every crop is dependent upon the water, the rain, the soil, the fertilizer, the environment of the time of that crop. But it is, in the studies that were done, and I think they were done very, very well, it is not a difference in that. But I want to emphasize that rainbow papaya is the one that has this extensive work has been done, that there's a pioneer in this and doing it the right way. And I think it is the first introduced. A lot of the other GM things we're talking about here have not had that kind of rigorous science done for them, and they haven't been thorough, and yet they've gone ahead and they've gotten this clarification, this okay from Food and Drug, USDA, EPA, and so on, when they really, in fact, have not done the quality of work that we've seen with the rainbow papaya.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Aloha.
Thank you. And before we get into the next round, I'm going to call for a 10-minute recess.
Thank you.